I think the world can take a lot from sport. Sport turns the needle when it comes to entertainment. And it gets everybody's emotions flowing. And it has done for decades, it has done for generations. Sport is that something that the majority of the population is very interested in. Golf shows your character. Sport shows your character. Following sport can show your character. Politics can have a look at sport is they can understand how it unifies people and how it unifies countries. Sport is an emotion.
Correct.
Can we use that emotion to make the world a better place? But I don't think sport should be used as a weapon. And I think that is, and as a statement, I think if it can be used in a positive manner, a positive fashion to connect people's emotion globally, yes, sports people change perceptions. And so when you try and use a place as a weapon, if you try and use it as a statement, I think that's the wrong thing. If you can use it in a positive way in which you can affect people's emotions, I think that is the only way, and you have access to such a great sport, especially here in India. I mean, it's a great sport. Cricket, it's a religion here.
So welcome back to the Raisina Ideas Pod. We have one of the protagonists with us this afternoon. Kevin, welcome to the Ideas Pod.
Thank you so much for having me. What a wonderful couple of days. Thought-provoking. In the world that we live in now, up there with some of the best couple of days that I've actually experienced, just because of all the world's uncertainty. Very interesting.
In fact, my first question to you was that what can the world learn from cricket? You know, the gentleman's game is one way of looking at it. Although someone told me don't call it the gentleman's game because that is not politically correct anymore. But I was also told that there was a straight bat, and the world used to, the game used to celebrate the straight bat. And today we are seeing all sorts of swishes and cuts and squares.
There's all sorts. What can the world take from cricket? I think the world can take a lot from sport. I don't know what the percentage is, but there is a minuscule percentage of the world that can call themselves professional sportsmen, international sportsmen, elite athletes. But sport turns the needle when it comes to entertainment. And it gets everybody's emotions flowing. And it has done for decades, it has done for generations. Sport is that something that the majority of the population is very interested in. And you're interested in it potentially financially. You're interested in potentially emotionally. And I think that when those two meet, you get quite an interesting sort of mixture. Because when you've got emotion, you've got financial, and then you've just got the love, I suppose, of different sports. It brings out the best in you. It can sometimes bring out the worst in you. I can use a golf analogy. Golf, they say, shows you your character, or golf teaches you character. A lot of people say it doesn't. Golf shows your character. Sport shows your character. Following sport can show your character. But I just see so many beautiful stories around the world in sport. I mean, I played cricket as a living, and I had way more worse days than I had good days. Way more worse days. I mean, played over 100 test matches. I think I scored 20-odd test match hundreds. That means 1 in 5, 1 in 4 days of being good in my career, because as a batter, you're judged on your hundreds. So I had to accept failure and defeat on numerous occasions. But where I think politics can have a look at sport is they can understand how it unifies people and how it unifies countries. I was asked a very good question on the stage when I said that politics and sport shouldn't meet.
Correct.
And I wrote that in my book years ago. But actually, I thought about it, and it was a very thought-provoking question, because if I said that then, why am I changing my tune now? But I'm changing my tune now to use something that is actually so emotionally attached to everybody. Sport is an emotion.
Correct.
Can we use that emotion to make the world a better place? Because in the world we live in today, it is gone. At the moment, it's just, we wake up in the morning as Normal people read the paper, we turn on the news. People don't have access to the conversations that we've had here over the last 24 to 48 hours. So they don't know what's happening in the world. But you wake up as Joe Soap, who lives in Hull in the UK, or lives in Johannesburg in South Africa, or Canberra in Australia. You're not seeing a good state of the world. You're seeing headlines, world war, nuclear, people dying, potential new viruses, vaccines don't work, vaccines do work, China, production on China, businesses suffering, health suffering. In the UK, people can't get access to medical health. They're waiting months and months for cancer treatments, for knee treatments, for all these sorts of treatments. All it is bad news at the moment. Is there something that unifies the world that can actually try and sort of get us to start joining hands again? And I think that's where I think sport can play a role. How it plays a role, that's for the smart people out there to figure out how it plays a role.
No, I think that's an important point. Let me just tease you on that a little.
Yes.
In fact, in the last century, we saw when we were at the peak of the Cold War.
Yep.
You saw certain Olympics being boycotted by certain countries.
Yep.
And sports had been politicized by that moment.
Yes.
Right? We saw countries not go in and play. But we have also seen individuals,
Yes.
because of their feats in the sporting arena, excite communities and maybe also draw interest from others in their lives and in their situations. You were mentioning something inside about sports victories in South Africa, for example.
Yes.
Right? So in your assessment, are we seeing a weaponization of sports today again? Something like we saw in the last century? Are we cancelling players, cancelling performances, cancelling participation? Or are we seeing, on the other hand, because of the democratization of access to sports, a far more vibrant global community of sports persons who have the power to bring us all together?
I think the wrong thing to affiliate sport and politics is to make statements through sport. I don't think that's the right thing to do. Yes, the more famous people get, the more they want to get into politicals, whether you're an actor, an actress, whether you're a high-profile sportsman, high-profile businessman. You try and get that political maneuvering. Because goodness, I can actually see how it helps you. The last 2 days, it's unbelievable what I've been privy to over the last 48 hours. But I don't think sport should be used as a weapon. And I think that is, and as a statement. I think if it can be used in a positive manner, a positive fashion, to connect people's emotion globally, yes. But I also said on stage there now that China, Russia, America, they don't play cricket. So from my perspective, from our sports perspective, being at the biggest sport in the Commonwealth or one of the biggest sports in the world. Pardon?
We should perhaps invest in...
But exactly. Well, there is an American league starting in July. So there is a cricket league. There's an IPL in America starting in July. I think it's July, August, it's sometime this year. But I think, yes, to politicize it, I mean by using it as a statement and using it as a weapon. I think to emotionally engage with people all over the world through something that is so emotional, and the majority of the world finds it so entertaining, I think that's the right approach.
So not as a weapon, but more as a positive force.
Absolutely.
To collaborate, connect, and cooperate, rather than to cancel and destroy or create negative.
I came to India in 2002, staying in a 5-star hotel, 5 stars through my roof maybe. But have a look in the last 20 years, where is one of the best places in the world to come and play cricket? Where is one of the best places in the world to stay in a hotel? I mean, I've got a friend who I've brought to India for the first time in his life. Blown away by how incredible. You change perceptions when you visit places. Sports people change perceptions, and so when you try and use a place as a weapon, if you try and use it as a statement, I think that's the wrong thing. If you can use it in a positive way in which you can affect people's emotions, I think that is the only way, and you have access to such a great sport, especially here in India. I mean, it's a great sport. Cricket, it's a religion here. But you also have access through football. You have access through some of the biggest sports in the world that can actually really start to intertwine. But I also raised a real good point, I think, where sometimes you just also got to give in a little bit. And I use that analogy, fighting with your wife or having an argument with your wife, as simple as it is, and it's probably the simplest analogy that you can have as a husband and a wife or a partnership. Sometimes you're going to have a disagreement where you know you're right, but actually for peace,
you have to give in.
Give in a little bit. Give in a little bit. So that's where I think sport can be used.
You also gave an analogy of South Africa and its sporting,
Yes.
recent sporting
Yes.
engagements with its own image and its
Yes.
own imagination.
Yes.
Can you share that? Can you share about that with our viewers today?
Well, I mean, South Africa obviously went through all its issues through apartheid in the 70s and 80s. Nelson Mandela came out of jail in 1992, I think, 93, 94. So that whole sort of joining of hands, that joining of forces, they call it the Rainbow Nation in South Africa, where because of apartheid, there was complete segregation, whites and black people, complete segregation. How did that country unite? How did that country? I mean, clearly they haven't, and I can speak from experience. I've just been in South Africa for the last 5 weeks, and tomorrow I'm actually going back to South Africa, and it's not in a great place. South Africa isn't in a great place. However, what actually unites that country and what actually brought that country together and what sort of was the enabler for it to be called the Rainbow Nation?
What's the game?
It was rugby. They won the 1995 Rugby World Cup in South Africa. Francois Pienaar and Nelson Mandela stood on the podium. Nelson Mandela put on the captain of South Africa's rugby jersey with his number on the back. They held arms. Francois Pienaar is now godfather, I think, to one of Nelson Mandela's children or grandchildren. A fabulous story, an incredible story. South Africa going through a hard time at the moment. 3 years ago, South Africa won the Rugby World Cup in Japan, and Siya Kolisi, a wonderful ambassador for the country, he gave this speech about we're doing this for South Africa, for the people in South Africa. Everybody knows we're going through a tough time. Again, sport, using sport for good.
So, Kevin, you seem to like India. And maybe
love India.
Yeah, so you love India.
Yes.
You met the Prime Minister yesterday.
Yes.
What excites you about India? What has drawn you to India? What is it that this country evokes in you?
Emotion. Hospitality better than anywhere in the world. You can come to India now and have the best time ever. It has everything. The infrastructure is incredible. From point of entry to point of exit, it is hands down spectacular. And it's educational. And like I said, fills you with emotion. And I think that what the government have done in terms of what Mr. Jaishankar was saying for the distribution of, say, the vaccine around the world, when they distributed it as well as they distributed it to countries that were struggling. Prime Minister Modi's words around one world, all of us are the same people, resonates with me. And I think it resonates with everything that I've been trying to say now over the last 45 minutes or so, both inside there and here. Work together. We're not all the same, but don't push agendas on people. Don't, because I believe in something else, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. I have a very close friend of mine that is so against, I mean, it's crazy how different his opinions are on vaccine, on COVID, on the pandemic, on politics. If I rang him now and said I got an injury, he's based in another country. If I rang it, before I put the phone down, he's already got somebody to come and fetch me. So it doesn't mean because your political beliefs are different, because you believe in whether you believe in what's happening on either side of the borderline in Ukraine, whether you believe in what happened with the pandemic was right, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. And it doesn't mean you can't be friends with somebody.
So tell me, Kevin, is this something that the sports field teaches you again? I'm sure when you're playing with teammates who you count on, depend on, rely on, when you're in big tournaments, many of those teammates would have very different views, would come from very different ethnicities and
Yes.
backgrounds and histories. So
Yes.
does the sport field tell you how to trust people who you may not agree with, or you may not necessarily have common views
I think you need to have a common goal. So, Samir, if you and I want to get to those flowers there needs to be a road that both of us go on together to get to those flowers. And you need to believe in that road that gets us to those flowers. And you can't err from that road. What you do on the side of the road in your own time, no problem. No problem. When I walked over the ropes playing for England, there was a couple of those people there that I absolutely couldn't stand. There were a couple of them that couldn't stand me. I got huge differences. I grew up in South Africa for 20 years. I'm not English. I played for England. So there were going to be differences. But can I tell you something? To get to those flowers there, to beat Australia, to beat India in 2012, it didn't matter what I thought when I was away from the field. When I crossed the boundary line, that guy, to get to those flowers, to beat India, to make sure that for the first time in 28 years we beat India and we left Kolkata or left Nagpur or wherever where the final test match was, I can't remember. But to enjoy that trip home, we all needed to believe in one line and one way to get there.
So I can forgive you for that. That's some of the.
I just wanted to bring that up. I just needed to bring that up.
But since you brought it up, let me ask you from your cricketing life a couple of points. So what was your most euphoric sporting moment that really gave you joy and your saddest sporting moment?
Tony Blair talked about the Ashes and ending up in Downing Street and all the celebrations after beating Australia for the first time in a very long time, beating Australia, that great Australian side that was led by Ricky Ponting. Beating Australia in my first series and being the sort of the guy that took the team home on that final day in London on the 11th of September 2005. I think it was the 11th or the 12th. That for me was, that stands out. Winning the World Cup, the first time England ever won a white ball World Cup. Winning that World Cup and being player of the World Cup was a pretty cool moment. I'll refer again to beating India in India for the first time in a long time against that team of Tendulkar, Dravid, Saurav wasn't playing.
He wasn't there, but Lakshman was there.
Lakshman was there. I mean, all the greats. Harbhajan Singh, young Ashwin, Zahir Khan, beating India in India, almost impossible.
Yes.
As the Australians are finding out right now. But to beat India in India was, again, unbelievable. So, I mean, having been asked that question many a time, I always give many examples because I was very lucky to be a part of something truly unique. The saddest time was just finishing, sitting in a dressing room thinking, I don't want to practice anymore. I'd rather be on the golf course. That for me was quite sad. Because when you've dedicated so much of your life and you've missed so many occasions and you've been so professional, when that goes, yes, there's a release of pressure, but also when you actually hang your boots up and you go, I'm never going to do that again, it is sad.
So my final question to you, what next for Kevin Pietersen? What's ahead of you? What is it that's exciting you today? And what is it that you really want to do?
What excites me? Because of all the sacrifices that I made as a player, what really excites me is spending time at home and being with my kids and being with my wife. I'm traveling back there right now after this, and then I'm going back to London. I'll see the kids, but then my wife and I are just going to go into Africa, spend time at our home in Africa, do some stuff that I've got to do down there in South Africa, and have freedom to just have a bit of a switch off. I've got a lot of businesses as well that are right front and center, opportunities that we don't want to miss. But it's about just making sure you separate time and you give the most important amount of time to the most important things. Right now I have got a business venture that I'm pursuing actively, which takes up, if there was 25 hours in the day, it would take up 25 hours in the day. But also I've got animals as very close to my heart. So the protection of animals. I was very fortunate enough to see the Prime Minister last night and talk to him about the cheetahs that were released, that he released on his birthday, and it brought a beautiful smile to his face. And we almost had a hug about it because I love conservationists. I love animals. I shot a beautiful documentary in Kaziranga about your Indian rhino and the success of conservation here in India and how India is actually a global leader in the world of conservation. You compare that to South Africa, it's a disaster. The rate that animals are being butchered in Africa and in South Africa, you compare that to what's happening in India. I mean, it's like India, and I mean, you can't even look at Africa. It's so far down the table. So it's quite cool to be able to spend time in different countries and
So
try and give back.
So
So
Kevin
that's my
Peterson-
giving back, huh?
Kevin Peterson, the maverick sports person, is now Kevin Peterson, the family man, the activist, the businessman.
Probably, yeah.
And at some point, Kevin Peterson will also have to lead a global awakening on the deployment, or rather the celebration of sports as a means to heal, as a means to bring people together.
That would be incredible.
And we hope that Kevin Peterson would come back to Raisina and see this place as a space where we can start that conversation.
Yes.
So
I
thank
think-
you
and I
very
think we
much,
should.
Kevin. And it's been wonderful having you with us. I wish you a safe trip home.
Thank you.
To your family.
Thank
and
you.
look forward to seeing you again, hopefully next year.
What are the dates for next year? So I can already block it.
By the time you land, you will have the new dates in your inbox. But thank you so much.
No, thank you, Samir. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for bringing me to India again. It is,
Thank
you can see it. I think you can see it in my eyes how much I love the place. It is a special, special place.
India loves you too, and now you have to face a bunch of reporters outside as we leave this room. So best of luck and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.